The old man did not move when the night arrived. He was already there, sitting quietly by the window, as if he had been waiting for the darkness all day. Outside, the world slowed down. No cars passed. No voices followed the wind. Only the soft breathing of the trees and a thin moon hanging like a thought that had not yet finished. The oil lamp beside him was still burning. It usually slept before he did. But tonight it stayed awake. The old man noticed this. He did not smile. He did not frown. He simply watched the small flame tremble, as if it wanted to say something, but did not know how. The room smelled of old wood and clean air. A chair remembered his weight. The floor remembered his footsteps. Everything in the room knew him well, and nothing felt new. Yet something felt different. The clock on the wall had stopped ticking. Not broken, just resting. The old man listened. Silence leaned closer. He placed his hands on his knees, slow and careful, as if time itself might wake if he moved too fast. His breathing was steady, deep, unhurried. Long ago he had learned that nights speak only to those who do not interrupt. The lamp flickered again. The old man whispered, not with his mouth, but with his presence. "I see you." Memories stirred gently, like dust floating in warm light. Not sharp memories, not sad ones. Just soft shapes of moments that had once mattered. A road at dawn, a cup of tea cooling on a table, a voice calling his name from very far away. The night wrapped itself around the house, slow and patient. It had no destination, no urgency. The old man leaned back in his chair. Somewhere between one breath and the next, the world felt lighter, as if it was ready to rest. And the lamp finally stopped shaking. But it did not go out. It waited. So did the old man. The old man did not stand up. He stayed in the chair because the chair still needed him there. The lamp's light stretched across the wooden floor, touching places that had not been noticed for years. The walls absorbed the glow quietly, like they were listening. The house had grown old with him, not beside him, with him. A soft sound came from somewhere deep inside the room. Not a noise, more like a breath. The old man heard it. He always did. He turned his head slightly, just enough to face the hallway where shadows gathered in long, gentle shapes. They were not dark. They were calm. At the end of the hallway, a door rested half open. It had been like that for years. No one remembered when it stopped closing fully. The old man remembered. He did not go to the door. Not yet. Instead, he reached for the small table beside him and placed his fingertips on its surface. The wood was warm. It remembered hands. Every night, the house spoke in small ways. A settling beam, a slow creak, a sigh from the ceiling. But tonight, it felt organized, as if everything was happening on purpose. The clock on the wall remained silent. Time had agreed not to interfere. The old man closed his eyes for a moment. Behind his eyelids, the past did not rush. It arrived slowly, like a guest who knew it would be welcomed. A younger version of himself walked through a morning field. The air was cold. His steps were lighter. The image did not hurt. It rested. He opened his eyes again. The lamp was steady now, its flame calm and tall. It had decided to stay. The old man nodded once. Outside the window, the moon shifted slightly, just enough to change the color of the room. Silver became softer. Edges disappeared. The door at the end of the hallway moved. Not opened, just remembered how. The old man inhaled deeply and slowly released the breath. He was not afraid. Fear had stopped visiting him long ago. This was something else. This was the night arranging itself. He leaned back in the chair, allowing the moment to settle into place. Nothing needed to be solved. Nothing needed to be chased. The house was awake. The lamp was awake. The old man was awake, and somewhere within the quiet walls, something ancient prepared to speak. Not in words, but in moments, the kind that only appear when the world is finally ready to sleep. The old man remained still, but the room did not. Very slowly, almost politely, the night shifted its weight. The shadows near the walls grew longer, not darker, just more aware. They stretched the way tired bodies do, carefully, without urgency. The old man felt it before he understood it. The house was listening, not to sound, to him. He adjusted his posture slightly, enough to feel the chair respond beneath him. It creaked once, softly, like a greeting. He placed his feet flat on the floor, grounding himself in the familiar certainty of wood and earth. The lamp continued to glow, steady and patient. Its light no longer flickered. It had chosen its role for the night. The old man's gaze drifted across the room. The bookshelf. The window. The old photograph frame turned face down on the side table. He had not turned it that way, but he knew what it showed. The air felt thicker now, not heavy, just full. Like a room filled with breath that had not yet been released. From the hallway came a sound. Not a footstep. Not a voice. A pause. The kind of pause that exists right before something remembers itself. The old man did not speak. He had learned long ago that nights do not like interruption. Instead, he rested his hands together, fingers lightly touching, as if holding something fragile and unseen. His breathing slowed even more. In, out. Each breath felt wider than the last. The walls seemed closer now, but not closing in. They leaned forward, curious. The ceiling lowered just enough to feel intimate, like a quiet conversation meant for no one else. The door at the end of the hallway creaked again. This time it opened no more than the width of a thought. Darkness waited beyond it. Not empty darkness. Familiar darkness. The kind that knows where everything belongs. The old man's chest rose and fell. There was no fear there. Only recognition. He had sat through many nights like this. Not identical. Never identical. But similar enough to feel known. The lamp's light reached toward the doorway but stopped just short, respecting a boundary it understood without instruction. Some moments are not meant to be illuminated. The old man tilted his head slightly, as if listening with more than his ears. The house responded with a gentle sound, a beam settling, a distant wall sighing. It was speaking to him in its own language, and he understood, not in words, in feeling. Something was coming, not arriving, not appearing, simply and continuing. The night was not introducing anything new. It was uncovering what had always been there. The old man closed his eyes. Behind them there was no rush of memory, only space. Warm. Wide. Accepting. When he opened his eyes again, the room felt complete. Arranged. Ready. The door remained open. The lamp remained lit. And the old man, calm and unshaken, allowed the night to take the next step. At its own pace, in its own time. The old man remained seated, yet his presence seemed to stretch beyond the chair, beyond the room and into the hallway itself. The open door waited without impatience. It did not invite. It did not demand. It simply existed. The light from the lamp rested gently on the floor, stopping where the hallway began, as if it understood that some spaces preferred to remain dim. The darkness beyond was not empty. It was layered, soft, familiar, and calm. The old man's eyes traced the outline of the doorway. He had passed through it countless times over the years, some nights carrying fatigue, some mornings carrying purpose, some evenings carrying nothing at all. Tonight he carried only awareness. A faint sound traveled through the house, not from above, not from below, from within. The house adjusted itself. Wood expanded and settled. Nails held their breath. The walls leaned into their own memories. The old man placed one hand on the arm of the chair. The fabric was worn smooth by time. It fit his palm as if shaped for it alone. He did not rise. There was no need to hurry toward what was already approaching. The hallway seemed longer than it had been before. Not stretched. Not distorted. Just deeper. The shadows within it shifted slightly, rearranging themselves into gentle forms. Not figures. Not shapes with meaning. Just presence. The old man felt a quiet warmth in his chest. Not emotion. Recognition. He had known this hallway since the beginning of the house. It had carried footsteps, laughter, silence, and absence. It had never judged any of it. The lamp behind him hummed softly, barely audible, like a living thing content to wait. Its light flickered once, then steadied again. The old man inhaled slowly. The breath traveled deep, filling spaces that had long remained untouched. As he exhaled, the hallway responded. A subtle movement rippled through the darkness, as if something had nodded in return. He leaned back slightly, letting the chair support him fully. The floor beneath felt solid, dependable, unchanged. Time did not move forward. It widened. Moments stretched outward, becoming spacious rather than long. There was room here, for thought, for memory, for nothing at all. The old man's gaze softened. He did not stare. He allowed. From somewhere far down the hallway, a gentle sound emerged. Not a step. Not a voice. A settling. The sound of something finding its place. The old man felt no need to respond. He had learned that stillness was sometimes the most precise answer. The night had not come to disturb him. It had come to align. The hallway remained open. The lamp remained lit. The house remained awake but calm. And the old man, breathing slow and steady, allowed the night to continue unfolding. Layer by layer. Without force. Without fear. Exactly as it was meant to. The house inhaled. Not suddenly. Not loudly. It happened so slowly that only someone like the old man could feel it. The walls did not move, yet they seemed to loosen. The ceiling did not rise, yet the space felt wider. The air itself softened, as if it had finally been given permission to rest. The old man noticed the change immediately. He shifted his weight slightly, allowing the chair to carry him fully. There was no stiffness in his body now. No resistance. Only balance. The hallway remained open, quiet, and patient. Its darkness was no longer distant. It felt nearer, not closer in space, but closer in understanding. The lamp behind him glowed warmly, painting the edges of the room with soft amber light. It no longer felt like a source of light. It felt like a companion. The old man's breathing slowed even further. Each inhale arrived without effort. Each exhale left without urgency. In the pause between breaths, something gentle passed through the house. A memory. Not sharp. Not emotional. Just present. The sound of rain against a window long ago. A coat hanging by the door. A quiet morning when the world felt new. The house remembered these things too. The floor responded with a soft, almost inaudible creak, not from strain, but from recognition. The wood had aged with him. It understood weight. It understood time. The old man placed his hand flat against the arm of the chair. The texture was smooth, worn by years of stillness rather than movement. He did not look toward the hallway this time. He did not need to. The darkness there was no longer something separate. It had blended into the room, becoming part of the same quiet fabric. Time stretched again, not forward but outward. Minutes became wide. Seconds became spacious. Nothing rushed to become something else. The lamp's flame leaned gently to one side, responding to a subtle movement of air. Then it straightened again. The house exhaled. This breath carried no sound, yet it changed everything. The tension that had quietly lived in corners dissolved. The stillness deepened, becoming softer rather than heavier. The old man felt it settle inside him. His shoulders lowered without instruction. His jaw relaxed. Even his thoughts seemed to slow their shape, becoming rounder, quieter. From the hallway came no movement now. No signal. No invitation. And none was needed. The night was no longer arranging itself. It had arrived. The old man rested fully into the moment, supported by chair, floor, walls, and air. He was not waiting. He was not anticipating. He was simply there. The house held him. The lamp watched quietly. And the night, calm and complete, continued. Without direction, without destination, exactly as sleep likes it. The silence settled next to the old man. It did not arrive from outside. It did not fall from above. It simply appeared, as if it had always been meant to sit there. The chair beside him remained empty, yet the space felt occupied. Not crowded, not heavy, just accompanied. The old man sensed it and allowed it to stay. His breathing adjusted naturally, matching the quiet rhythm that now filled the room. In, out. Each breath seemed to smooth the edges of the moment. The lamp's glow softened again, turning warmer, rounder. Shadows no longer stretched, they rested. Corners no longer waited, they belonged. The hallway had faded into the background, not gone, just settled. Its presence was gentle now, like a thought that no longer needed attention. The old man lowered his gaze toward the floor. The pattern in the wood felt familiar, even comforting. Lines carved by years of use, of patience, of footsteps that had slowed with time. He remembered none of them clearly, and that felt right. The silence beside him did not speak. It listened. The house seemed to respond by growing quieter still, as if it had been asked politely to pause. Even the distant world beyond the walls felt far away, wrapped in its own rest. The old man placed both feet firmly on the floor. The contact grounded him gently, reminding him of weight, of balance, of presence. There was no urge to move. Time softened again. Not stretching. Not slowing. Just losing its edges. Moments drifted into one another, indistinguishable and calm. There was no beginning to mark. No ending to expect. The lamp flickered once, barely noticeable, then steadied. Its flame seemed content, as if reassured by the stillness around it. The old man closed his eyes. Behind them, there was no rush of images. No stories demanding attention. Only a wide, quiet space, warm and dim. He felt the silence beside him shift slightly, adjusting as if settling more comfortably. The house held its breath, not from tension but from contentment. Like someone listening to a story they already loved. The old man's shoulders sank lower into rest. His hands rested loosely, fingers no longer aware of their shape. The night had stopped unfolding. It had arrived fully. Nothing new waited to happen. Nothing needed to change. The silence remained beside him. The lamp remained awake. The house remained calm. And the old man, steady and unhurried, remained exactly where he was. Supported, uninterrupted, and ready to drift wherever the quiet might gently carry him next. Time rested differently now. It no longer felt like something moving past the old man. It felt like something settling around him, slow and wide, as if the night itself had decided to stay. The silence beside him remained, steady and calm. It did not press closer. It did not drift away. It simply existed, sharing the space without expectation. The old man adjusted his breathing without realizing it. Each inhale felt deeper than before, as if the air had grown softer. Each exhale left behind a gentle warmth in his chest. The lamp's light curved around the room, no longer casting sharp edges. Everything looked rounded now. Corners, shadows, even the space between objects. The world had lost its need for precision. The hallway no longer drew attention. It had become part of the background, like a memory that no longer needed to be recalled. The old man lowered his chin slightly, his gaze unfocused. His eyes were open, yet they no longer searched. They rested on nothing in particular. The house responded. A faint sound traveled through the walls, not a creak, not a shift, more like a deep settling, as if the building itself had grown comfortable. The floor beneath his feet felt solid and reassuring. It carried his weight without complaint, without effort. It had done so for years. Time grew heavier, but in a gentle way, not burdensome, not slow. Full. Moments stacked softly upon one another, like folded blankets placed with care. There was no sharp division between them, no urgency to move from one to the next. The old man's hands rested loosely in his lap. His fingers curled naturally, free of tension. Even his thoughts had softened, losing their shape before they could fully form. The silence beside him shifted again, barely noticeable, like someone adjusting their posture in sleep. The lamp's flame dipped once, then steadied, glowing lower now, quieter. Its light seemed less concerned with visibility and more with comfort. The old man's shoulders dropped another fraction. A small release, a subtle surrender. The room felt warmer, not in temperature, but in presence, like a place that remembered him kindly. Beyond the walls, the night continued its quiet work. Stars held their places. The sky remained wide and patient. Nothing asked for attention. Nothing demanded response. The old man remained seated, yet he felt lighter than before, as if some unseen weight had been gently set aside. Time did not move him forward. It held him. The silence stayed. The house rested. The lamp watched. And the old man, wrapped in the fullness of the moment, allowed himself to sink deeper into the quiet. Not toward sleep, not toward thought, but into a calm space where nothing was missing, and nothing was required. There was a space between the old man's breaths. Not empty, not silent, just wide. He noticed it without thinking. The gentle pause after the air left his lungs and before the next breath arrived. That space lingered longer than before, calm and unbothered. The silence beside him seemed to settle deeper into that pause, as if it had found a home there. The lamp's glow softened again, dimming not in brightness but in presence. It no longer announced itself as light. It simply existed, warm and steady, like a quiet companion who knew when not to speak. The old man's chest rose slowly. The breath came in, smooth and unforced. When it left, it carried nothing with it. The room felt farther away now. Not distant, just less defined. Edges blurred gently. Objects no longer insisted on their shapes. The hallway, once noticeable, now felt like a thought already completed. It remained open, but it asked for nothing. The old man's head leaned back slightly against the chair. The fabric supported him without resistance, as if shaped perfectly to his stillness. Time thinned. Not disappearing. Not stopping. Becoming transparent. Moments passed through him instead of around him. They did not touch. They did not stay. The house remained quiet but not alert. It had relaxed into itself. The walls no longer listened. They rested. The floor beneath his feet felt cooler now, grounding and calm. A steady reminder that he was held, supported, and safe. The old man's hands felt lighter in his lap. His fingers barely noticed one another. The sense of separation between them softened. The silence beside him shifted once more, then grew still. It felt closer now, but not nearer in space. Nearer in rhythm. Breath. Pause. Breath. Each cycle slower than the last. The lamp's flame dipped lower, its movement almost imperceptible. It seemed content to glow quietly, unconcerned with the passing of minutes. The old man's eyes closed, not deliberately, not suddenly. They simply rested shut, as if they had finished their work for the night. Behind his eyelids there was no darkness, only a soft depth, like looking into calm water that reflected nothing. Thoughts tried to form but faded before they could take shape. They dissolved into the wide space between breaths. The house held steady. The silence remained. The night did not progress. It settled. The old man felt himself drifting, not falling, not moving, but gently loosening his connection to the need to remain aware. Breath continued on its own. The pause grew longer, and in that quiet place between breaths where nothing needed to happen and nothing waited to begin, the old man rested. Uninterrupted, unobserved, and perfectly at ease. The night no longer felt heavy. It had thinned into something soft and floating, like a blanket made of air. The old man remained in his chair, yet his body felt lighter, as if the floor beneath him had gently loosened its hold. Breath moved on its own now. In, out. No effort followed it. The pause between breaths widened again, calm and untroubled. It stayed a moment longer than expected, then allowed the next breath to arrive naturally. The silence beside him did not shift this time. It had settled fully. It felt complete. The lamp's glow dimmed just slightly, not fading, not weakening, only lowering its presence. The room no longer needed to be seen. It only needed to be felt. The old man's shoulders sank another fraction. A small release passed through him, like a quiet agreement made without words. The walls seemed farther away now, not in distance, but in importance. They no longer framed the room. They simply existed somewhere beyond awareness. The hallway had become memoryless. Still there, still open, but no longer noticed. Time softened again. Not slowing, not stretching, losing weight. Seconds no longer landed. They drifted past, unnoticed, leaving no trace behind. The old man's hands rested loosely in his lap. He could no longer feel where one finger ended and the next began. The sense of edges had faded. The floor beneath his feet remained cool and steady, a quiet anchor to the present. It held him without asking anything in return. The house was no longer listening. It was sleeping. Even the subtle sounds that once moved through the walls had settled into stillness. Nothing shifted. Nothing adjusted. The night felt wide now, open, unmeasured. The old man's face relaxed completely. His jaw loosened. The muscles around his eyes softened. Behind his closed eyelids, there were no images, no thoughts, no memories arriving, only depth. Like standing at the edge of calm water and choosing not to step in. Just feeling the quiet stretch outward. Breath continued. The pause followed. Each cycle quieter than the last. The lamp's flame leaned gently, then steadied, glowing low and patient. It seemed unconcerned with staying awake. The old man's awareness drifted, not forward, not downward, but outward, thinning gently into the surrounding quiet. Nothing needed to be remembered. Nothing needed to be held. The night did not carry him anywhere. It simply supported him where he was, weightless, resting. And as the space around him grew softer and less defined, the old man remained calm, unmoving, and deeply settled, allowing the night to continue exactly as it was, without direction, without end. The old man no longer noticed the chair. It still supported him. The floor still held him. But his awareness no longer rested on those details. They had done their work. Breath continued in a slow, gentle rhythm. In, out. The pause between breaths now felt natural, unmeasured, uncounted. The silence beside him remained, but it no longer felt like something separate. It blended into everything, into the air, into the room, into him. The lamp's glow dimmed again, settling low and warm. Its light barely reached the walls now. Edges softened further. The room felt more like a feeling than a place. The old man's body grew very still. Not stiff, not tense. At rest. His shoulders were heavy in the best way, sinking gently into comfort. His hands rested without shape or purpose. Even the sense of weight began to fade. Time thinned until it was almost transparent. There was no sense of before. no sense of after. Only this. The house had fully fallen asleep. No creaks. No settling. No quiet signals moving through the walls. It rested as deeply as the old man did. Behind his closed eyelids, thoughts attempted to form, but they dissolved before becoming words. They softened into impressions, then faded into nothing at all. There was no effort in letting go. Letting go happened on its own. The pause between breaths widened again, calm and welcoming. When the next breath arrived, it did so gently, as if careful not to disturb the quiet. The old man's face remained relaxed, his brow smooth, his jaw loose. Nothing asked for attention. Nothing asked to be remembered. The night no longer felt like something surrounding him. It felt like something he was part of. Awareness drifted outward, thinning gently, like mist spreading across still water. There was no direction to it. No destination. Just soft expansion. The lamp glowed faintly, content to remain without being noticed. Its flame barely moved now, steady and low. The old man did not think about sleep. He did not move toward it. Sleep moved toward him. Quietly. Without announcement. The last sense to remain was the rhythm of breath. Even that began to feel distant, like something happening somewhere nearby but not needing observation. The night held him without pressure. The silence remained without demand. And at the edge where thoughts let go and awareness softened into rest, the old man stayed, calm, supported, and gently carried as the world continued, quietly, without him needing to notice. Nothing asked for his attention anymore. Not the room, not the house, not even the quiet itself. The old man remained where he was, but the sense of being somewhere had softened. Location no longer mattered. Position no longer mattered. Breath continued, gentle and distant, like waves moving somewhere far away. He did not follow it. It happened on its own. The pause between breaths widened again, calm and open. There was no urge for the next breath to arrive quickly. It came when it was ready. The lamp's glow had faded into something barely noticeable. It still existed, but without insistence. Light no longer defined space. Space no longer needed definition. The old man's body felt warm and loose, as if gravity itself had softened. There was weight, but it was distributed evenly without pressure. The chair, the floor, the air, all supported him without being felt. The house had gone completely quiet. Not listening. Not responding. Sleeping. Time no longer had a shape. It did not stretch. It did not pass. It simply was, or perhaps it was not. Thoughts did not arrive anymore. They had stopped forming at the door and no longer knocked. Awareness remained, but it was thin now, like a soft glow beneath calm water. The old man's face stayed relaxed. No movement. No tension. Behind his closed eyelids, there were no images. Only a deep, comfortable darkness that felt familiar and safe. The night no longer felt wide. It felt complete. Nothing waited to happen. Nothing needed to unfold. The rhythm of the world had slowed to something almost unnoticeable. Stars held their places without effort. The sky remained patient. The old man's awareness drifted again, not downward, not away, just loosening, thinning, spreading softly. Breath came. Pause followed. Each cycle quieter than the last. The silence no longer sat beside him. It surrounded him fully, without edges. The idea of being awake faded. Not suddenly. Not completely. Just enough. Sleep did not arrive as a moment. It arrived as an agreement. A gentle one. The night held him without movement. The house rested without sound. And the old man, calm and unburdened, remained, floating gently at the edge where awareness softens, where nothing is required, and rest begins without needing to be noticed. The house had settled completely now. No creaks. No subtle shifts. It rested, as if it had learned to breathe alongside him. The old man remained seated, though the feeling of seated had grown thin. It was as though the chair and the floor had melted into him. Not gone, not absent, but softened into a continuous presence. His breath continued automatically. In, out. The pause between breaths stretched and settled. There was no urgency. There was no expectation. The lamp's glow had become subtle warmth. Its edges had blurred, melting gently into the room. It was no longer light in the traditional sense. It was comfort given form. The hallway had become part of the house's stillness. It no longer waited for attention. It simply existed, a quiet corridor of calm, undisturbed. The old man's hands rested in his lap, fingers loose and unaware. Weight had dissolved. Muscles had dissolved. Time had dissolved. The silence beside him was now everywhere. It had grown thick and soft, like a gentle mist that floated around and through him. Yet it carried no pressure, only ease. The floor beneath him felt secure, familiar, and neutral. The walls leaned just slightly inward, not pressing, simply present. Even the air seemed to pause, content to hold its shape without motion. Thoughts no longer arose. They were unnecessary. The mind simply observed, soft and distant, aware without focus. Breath became rhythm, but rhythm without notice. It moved, and the old man followed no longer. He allowed. The lamp's small flame flickered once, just a whisper, then steadied. It existed quietly, as if it too was learning to rest. The old man's eyelids were closed, but his awareness remained gently at the edge. Not active, not searching, just there. Time thinned further, almost imperceptibly. Minutes blurred together, seconds became soft spaces. Nothing needed distinction. Nothing required judgment. The house exhaled alongside him, a soundless motion that softened every surface. Wood, fabric, walls, air, and light all folded gently into one shared calm. The night had stopped moving. It did not progress forward. It did not pause backward. It simply existed with him. His body, now fully supported, felt weightless. Even the sense of being in the room had become optional. Presence itself was enough. Breath continued. Pause followed. Each cycle a quiet whisper in a place without edges. The old man rested there, fully, gently, without thought, without concern. The lamp glowed low. The house held its shape, and the night carried on. A perfect, soft, unbroken cradle for everything that needed to sleep. The room had grown even softer now. Walls, floor, and ceiling seemed to melt together, holding no edges. The old man sat quietly, but his presence had thinned into the space, as if he were floating just above the floor, supported by calm alone. Breath moved automatically. In, out. The pause between breaths stretched further, filling the air with effortless rhythm. There was no need to notice. It simply existed. The lamp's glow had softened to a faint warmth. It no longer illuminated, it comforted. Its light wrapped around the old man gently, like a silent friend who did not ask for attention. The silence beside him had transformed. It was no longer beside him. It was the room itself, flowing through walls, air, and floor, permeating every corner. It carried no pressure, no expectation, only ease. The hallway, once noticeable, now felt like memory itself, open, still, and weightless. No need to enter, no need to observe. It simply existed in harmony with the rest of the quiet. The old man's hands rested lightly in his lap, fingers curling gently without thought. Muscles and weight dissolved completely. Even consciousness had thinned, slipping into a gentle, steady awareness that did not demand attention. Time had grown soft. Minutes folded into seconds. Seconds dissolved into pauses. There was no forward. There was no backward. Only now, and it was calm. The house seemed to breathe with him. A slow, rhythmic breathing, soft and unhurried. Each exhale of the house folded into the old man's own breath, merging without force, without notice. The old man's eyes remained closed. Not asleep, not awake. Balanced perfectly between awareness and rest, floating in the gentle rhythm of the night. The night outside had softened too. Wind and distant sounds had disappeared. The world itself seemed to exhale, folding into the room, into the house, into the quiet presence of the old man. Breath continued. Pause followed. Each cycle slower than the last. Edges of thought blurred. Edges of time blurred. The house, the lamp, the room, and the old man had become one continuous, weightless calm. No movement was needed. No effort was required. No attention was demanded. The old man rested completely, fully, deeply, and the night held him, weightless, calm, and perfectly contained, allowing the mind to float, letting sleep drift closer with every gentle exhale. The house was completely still now. No creaks, no whispers, no shifting air. It had become a single, wide, calm presence, holding the old man gently within its walls. He remained seated, yet the sensation of sitting had thinned. The chair and floor were no longer separate from him. They had softened into his being, supporting him without notice. Breath continued automatically. In, out. The pauses between breaths stretched like quiet bridges, carrying the stillness through every part of the room. The lamp's light had softened to a subtle glow, wrapping around him like warmth instead of illumination. It no longer defined space, only presence, a gentle companion in the quiet. The hallway had dissolved into calm, a soft corridor that neither invited nor demanded. It had become part of the stillness itself. The old man's hands rested loosely in his lap. Muscles, tension, effort, all had melted away. Even thought had thinned, slipping like a soft mist that touched nothing and left no trace. Time had become almost weightless. Seconds and minutes merged. The sense of now expanded, unbounded and calm. The silence was everywhere. It was not beside him, above him, or around him. It was him, and he was it, and they existed together without distinction. The house breathed with him, slow, deep, unhurried. Its exhalations blended with his own, invisible, soft, and weightless. Outside, the night had quieted completely. No wind, no distant sounds. Even the stars seemed suspended, holding their positions without movement. The old man's eyes remained closed. He was neither asleep nor awake. He existed in the gentle pause where awareness thinned, where thought softened, where rest expanded. Each breath moved naturally, the pauses longer, calmer, more unmeasured. Edges of sound, light, time, and body dissolved. Nothing demanded attention. Nothing required effort. The lamp flickered once, a subtle dance, then steadied again. It was merely present, just as the house, the room, the air, and the old man were present together in perfect harmony. The old man's awareness thinned further, floating, weightless, unhurried. Sleep had not arrived forcibly. It drifted near him, a gentle tide waiting to merge. Breath continued. Pause followed. The room, the house, the night, and the old man became one continuous calm. And in that perfect stillness where nothing moved but the quiet rhythm of life itself, he rested. Fully, weightlessly, and unbroken. The quiet had grown so deep that it was almost tangible. It settled in the corners of the room, in the spaces between walls, even between breaths. The old man remained seated, yet the sensation of being seated had thinned into something weightless. He was supported fully, everywhere at once, yet nowhere in particular. Breath moved automatically. In, out. Each pause stretched gently, widening without effort, carrying stillness into every part of him. The lamp's glow had softened to warmth alone, its edges melting into the room. It no longer illuminated. It comforted. It was not noticed, it simply existed. The hallway had dissolved into calm, no longer distinct, no longer demanding. It was nothing more than gentle space, soft, open, patient. The old man's hands rested lightly in his lap. Muscles, tension, weight, all had dissolved. Even thought had thinned into a light mist, drifting through and fading, leaving no trace behind. Time had lost all shape. Minutes and seconds merged into pauses, soft and unmeasured. The concept of now expanded without edges. The house breathed slowly with him. Not consciously, not intentionally, simply as part of the same calm rhythm. Each exhale of the house blended with his own breath, unnoticed and seamless. Outside, the night remained soft and still. No wind, no sound. Even the stars seemed suspended, holding their light gently without movement. The old man's eyes remained closed. Not asleep, not awake. Floating somewhere in between, perfectly balanced. The edges of perception had softened. Every sense had become quiet, patient, and gentle. Each breath continued. Each pause followed. The room, the house, the lamp, and the old man had become one continuous, weightless calm. Nothing moved. Nothing demanded. Nothing asked for attention. The old man rested fully, lightly, and without effort. Awareness had thinned to a soft glow. Sleep drifted close like a quiet tide, not forcing, not rushing. It waited only for him to yield. The house exhaled softly. The night carried its own gentle rhythm. And the old man, fully supported, fully held, floated in that calm, letting the world fold around him. Weightless. Still, and utterly at peace. The night had grown soft enough to sit upon. It curled gently around the old man, a quiet embrace that held without force. He remained in the chair, yet the sense of chair had thinned. The floor, the walls, even the air, they were all part of the same calm, weightless presence. Breath moved slowly, effortlessly. In, out. The pauses widened, as if the night itself had decided to slow along with him. The lamp's light had become a gentle warmth, wrapping around the old man without need for notice. It no longer illuminated objects. It illuminated calm itself. The hallway had melted into quiet. Open, soft, patient, it asked nothing of him. It simply existed as part of the stillness that now surrounded him completely. The old man's hands rested loosely in his lap, fingers relaxed. Muscles, weight, tension, all had dissolved. Even thought had thinned, becoming a soft mist that drifted through and vanished. Time had folded inwards. Minutes, seconds, pauses, they blended into one wide, weightless presence. There was no beginning. There was no end. Only the now, endless, calm, and gentle. The house breathed in tandem with him. Slowly, silently, unhurried. Each exhale folded into his own, creating a quiet rhythm that carried nothing but stillness. Outside, the night was weightless. No wind. No distant sounds. Even the stars seemed to hold their light without motion, steady and calm. The old man's eyes remained closed. Not asleep, not awake. Somewhere perfectly balanced in the quiet. Edges of perception had softened completely. Every sense had thinned into gentle awareness. The lamp flickered once, almost imperceptibly, then remained steady. The room, the house, the air, and the night, everything existed in seamless calm. Breath continued. Pause followed. The old man floated lightly within this vast, weightless stillness. No movement. No urgency. No expectation. The night folded inwards around him. The house held him softly, and the old man, fully supported and entirely calm, let himself drift, not into sleep, not into thought, but into the perfect quiet where the world continued, unnoticed and nothing was required. The edges of presence thinned further. Awareness melted softly into the calm, and sleep hovered near, gentle, patient, inevitable. The air had grown thick with calm. Not heavy, not pressing. Soft, weightless, expansive, it moved through the room as quietly as a thought dissolving into silence. The old man remained seated, though the sense of being seated had thinned entirely. The floor, the chair, the room itself, they were all part of the same gentle support, carrying him without effort or notice. Breath continued automatically. In, out. Each pause lengthened, stretching like a quiet bridge across the space of the room. There was no urgency, no expectation, only presence, soft and patient. The lamp's glow had become pure warmth. Edges had melted completely. It no longer illuminated objects, it illuminated comfort. A silent companion, unnoticed yet entirely present. The hallway had dissolved fully into calm. It was neither near nor far. It simply existed, open, patient, weightless. No movement required, no attention asked. The old man's hands rested loosely in his lap. Fingers curled without thought. Muscles, weight, tension, all dissolved into the soft, encompassing calm. Time had lost its shape. Seconds folded into minutes. Minutes folded into pauses. The sense of now stretched endlessly, soft and unbroken. The house breathed alongside him. Slowly, gently. Each exhale blending with his own, creating a rhythm that required nothing, demanded nothing, and moved nothing. Outside, the night was completely still. No wind. No distant sound. Stars held their light softly, unmoving, patient. The old man's eyes remained closed. Not asleep, not awake. Perfectly balanced in the gentle space where awareness thinned and rest expanded. Breath continued. Pause followed. The room, the house, the lamp, and the old man became one continuous calm. Edges of perception melted. The silence was no longer beside him. It had merged entirely with him. Weightlessness grew, soft and expansive. The old man floated effortlessly within it. The night held him. The house carried him, and calm wrapped around him completely. Sleep drew near gently, a soft tide brushing against the edges of awareness. It did not push. It did not rush. It only waited patiently. And in this perfect, weightless stillness, the old man rested, supported, unbroken and perfectly at peace. Breath. Pause. Calm. The world continued quietly. He needed nothing. He required nothing. Everything existed in perfect harmony. The night had grown endless, soft and slow as if it had nowhere to go and nothing to hurry. The old man remained seated, though the sensation of seated had thinned into pure presence. Floor, chair, walls, air, all had merged into the same gentle calm that carried him effortlessly. Breath continued on its own. In, out. Pauses stretched longer than before, filling the room with an almost tangible quiet. There was no need to follow. There was no need to measure. Only calm existed. The lamp's glow had softened further, fading almost entirely into warmth. It no longer touched the room with light. It simply existed, a gentle presence that required nothing and asked for nothing. The hallway had disappeared into the soft fabric of the house. Open space, patient, weightless. No direction, no urgency. It simply was. The old man's hands rested lightly in his lap. Muscles, weight, tension, all had melted away. Even thought had become nothing more than a soft mist drifting through the edges of awareness. Time had thinned almost to transparency. Seconds and minutes merged into one gentle, endless now. Nothing moved. Nothing changed. The house breathed alongside him. Slow, rhythmic, unhurried. Each exhale of the house blended perfectly with his own, carrying no weight, no urgency. Outside, the night remained still. No wind, no sound. Stars hung softly in the sky, patient, unmoving. The old man's eyes stayed closed. Not asleep, not awake. Perfectly balanced at the edge where awareness softens and drift begins. Each breath continued. Each pause followed. The room, the house, the lamp, and the old man became one seamless calm. Edges of perception thinned. The silence fully enveloped him. The weightlessness grew expansive, soft, and infinite. The old man floated without thought, without effort. Sleep hovered gently, patient, inevitable. The night held him completely. The house held him completely. And the old man rested, weightless, supported, and perfectly at peace. Every element, the quiet, the warmth, the soft rhythm of breath, worked together to carry him further into deep, unbroken rest. Time, awareness, and presence melted into one soft tide. And in this endless, seamless calm, the old man drifted, fully immersed, fully held, and entirely, perfectly still. The room had become a quiet ocean. Walls, floor, ceiling, all had dissolved into the same endless calm. The old man remained, yet remained no longer had meaning. He was part of the calm. The calm was part of him. Breath moved gently on its own. In, out. Pauses stretched long and soft, carrying weightless silence through the space, through the house, through him. The lamp's glow had vanished into warmth. No light, no presence. Only comfort, quietly holding everything together. The hallway had folded into the room. It was no longer separate, no longer a path. It was the same calm that wrapped around the old man completely, endlessly. His hands rested loosely in his lap. Muscles, tension, effort, all had melted. Even awareness had thinned to the softest edges, floating like mist over still water. Time had become a soft tide. Seconds folded into minutes. Minutes folded into pauses. Nothing had a shape. Nothing demanded attention. Nothing existed but the gentle now, infinite, calm, and unbroken. The house breathed slowly with him. Each exhale of the house merged with his own. Each inhalation flowed through walls, air, floor, and warmth. Effortless, seamless, weightless. Outside, the night held everything gently. Stars, sky, and distant air remained suspended, patient and unmoving. Even the smallest sound had softened into quiet. The old man's eyes remained closed. Not asleep, not awake. Perfectly balanced at the edge where awareness dissolves and sleep drifts in. Breath. Pause. Calm. Weightlessness. Edges of perception disappeared entirely. The silence was everywhere. The night, the house, the lamp, and the old man were one seamless tide of rest. The old man floated lightly, carried completely by the gentle rhythm of the night. Sleep had arrived quietly, naturally, fully. Not forced, not sudden, not abrupt. Every part of him, every part of the house, every part of the night worked together to hold him. There was no thought, no worry, no movement. Only the soft, endless drift of existence in perfect calm. And as the last pause lingered, the old man dissolved fully into the tide of rest. He was weightless. He was calm. He was entirely held. Breath continued. Pause followed. The night carried on softly, endlessly, without edges, without end. And in that absolute, unbroken, perfect stillness, the old man slept. Completely, deeply, and without need for anything else. The world waited silently. Time waited silently. Everything existed in soft, perfect harmony, and the night, the house, and the old man were one,